Bron. 1 hour late. 1.5 hours late. Oh my god. That's pretty late. To make some notes. To make some notes so I know what the hell I'm gonna talk about. Complicated shit. Why did I say I was gonna do this? Okay, let's see. Back to school. Back to school. How cars work, why setup matters. Oh my god, that's a hard question. Yeah, Gary's on point. He already linked to that setup, which I didn't even want you to know about yet. That's fine, that's fine. Give me a number. Give me a number. What's a number we could achieve? Okay, Americans are awake, Europeans are still awake. 100. We have to get over 100 people. I'm not doing this if we don't get over 100 people. This is a lot of work. I have to focus. I have to think about what I'm doing. It's not going to be easy, this one. So we need over 100 people. 100 what? Sandro. Give me a number, Sandro. $133. Okay, $133 it is. You know what to do. Okay, so Captain Club Race is probably awake. Probably preparing his cards or something. You know, better spam that guy. Also his boss. Basically just look at my Facebook, like any kind of person that seems to be a bit of a hater, just spam them. Paul King is good. He blocked me years ago. Spam that guy. You know? Just get your mums to watch whatever you can do. It's working. It's work. 108. It's going up. It's going up. Hashtag closer to 40. Dominic, why are you even on here? You don't even speak English. Okay, 108. You can do better than that. Asia seems to be awake. Well, only Edward, because he has jet lag. I don't think there's even 100 people that like you. Why are you on here, Bobby Bumps? What kind of name is that anyway? 118. It's going up. It's going up. I need to finish my notes here. Oh my god, we're gonna achieve it. 131 already. Boom, we made it. That's crazy. But I'm not done with my notes. So you're gonna have to just wait a minute. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a good one. I'm gonna talk about setup. I need some notes so I can clear my mind. You know what? This is gonna help. You knew it. A green one today. Green one. Vodka lime, it says. Wow, that's crazy. Never had one of these. Man, that's good. Wow, that's really good. Man, this might be better than the original. Wow. Anyway, let me finish these notes now. Memphis, Tennessee. Man, we have a lot of people on here, all over. Even lefties on here. JQ isn't prepared. No, say it ain't so. Yeah, I said I was going to do this really good Facebook Live and haven't prepared shit. This means if this is good, then I actually know my shit. What changes to make and why? Wow, this is going to be a tough one. I'm joining from work, get on it. What the fuck is that, a full loco? What? Did you send me a 12 hat? No, I didn't get an order, no money, you know, so nothing moves without money, man. Okay, let's just begin. We have enough people. I'm sure Captain Club Race has been notified. Actually, where's Anthony Westergaard? Somebody spam Anthony Westergaard. He needs help. That guy needs help. I'm gonna message this guy. I'm gonna post this on his. How do I even do this? Can I share my own live feed somehow? Can I do this? Let's see if this gets messed up now. Hi. How do I do this? Share on friends timeline. This is what you've been doing with Captain Club Race, right? I hope so. There we go. We miss you, I wrote. Share as successfully shared. That's good, that's good. Okay. You see one, the tone is on you. What? On the tone, maybe. You see on the tone is on you. What are you talking about? I haven't seen any on the tone. What's going on with on the tone? Let's check that just quick before we start. What? Doesn't even find any. What is? Jesus Christ. What is it? A page? On the tone. Doesn't find anything. Soon you'll be fighting against Captain Club Race in the 40 plus. How can I be drunk? You just saw me open this. I just opened it. I haven't drank anything. What about on the tone? What's going on the tone? I don't see anything here. Oh, here we go. Video. There's no comments. I don't know. You need to be more specific than that. I didn't see anything. I just wasted 2 minutes of my life. Okay. Is Anthony Westergaard here yet? Okay, see? Chris is already asking about the new setup. That's why I didn't want you to find it yet. We have to start with the basics. Okay, here goes. Can I start? Loop is live, not on the tone. Oh, fuck. Forget about those shit fountains. We're over that. Okay, I'm just gonna start. How do I start this thing? So how cars work, why setup matters. That's the thing. Maybe I can explain invisible speed here. Because I got a lot of shit for that term. Okay. here goes. Tires. Tires are the most important thing. Tires, right here, you know. Tires is the only contact the car has with the track. So you want to maximize the traction. The more grip you have, the faster you can be. More acceleration, car stops faster, more steering, more corner speed, everything. So tires is key. So then just a quick bit of theory about tires. It's pretty self-explanatory, really. The more weight there's on a tire, the more traction it can have. That's why sometimes people add one reason why when people add weight to the car, they're like, oh, I have more grip. Well, part of the reason is that there's more weight on the tire and that generates more grip. But there's a limit to everything. So there does come a point where you have too much weight on a tire and it actually deforms, the pins bend, it doesn't generate more grip. So it's like a curve that goes up, reaches a maximum point and then drops down. But yes, so more weight on a tire will give more grip. Then there's another interesting thing. So a tire can only have its maximum amount of traction in one direction. So you could draw a circle, traction circle it's called. Let's draw a circle here, just quickly. Explain this. This is all going to make sense. This is all going to make sense to you. Promise. So let's just explain it like this. So I don't know which way they do this in the books, but let's say forward and backwards. So acceleration and braking. So in forward and backward motion, this is the maximum amount of grip you can have. Cornering left and right, this is the maximum amount of grip you can have, right? So what this circle represents is what is this called in English? Circumference, but there's a name for that, right? Anyway, this circle is the maximum amount of grip available. So you can't have the maximum amount of front to back traction and at the same time the maximum amount of side bite. It's not possible. The maximum amount there is a compromise. It's over here somewhere. So you could still have more traction forward to back. You can still have more traction left to right. But when you have a combination, you can't get the maximum amount in one direction. So what I can explain it like this. If you've ever done a burnout, for example, you're like accelerating super hard and your wheels start to spin and you've kind of gone past the maximum amount of traction that the tires can provide, accelerating straight forward. You're going to have no side bite. There's nothing left. All the traction the tires have is going towards providing front forward bite. So your car or bike is going to start to wander sideways because there's no side bite. Also, if you go into a corner, for example, and you brake really hard, you're braking really hard and you're braking so hard that your wheels lock and start to slide. Well, if you turn the wheels, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to slide straight. Same thing. You've gone too far. You are asking for too much from the tire. It doesn't have any side bite to give you. It's not going to turn. Do you understand that concept? So just the very, very basics of tires. So more weight on tires and you'll have more grip. And you can only have the maximum amount of traction in one direction. So either front to back or side bite. Everything else will be a compromise. And then a four-wheel drive car like ours, so we have 4 of these tires. We have 4 of them. So the most grip we're going to have with a car like this is when they're all working together. So all 4 tires are equally loaded and trying to drive the car in the same direction. So that's when we're going to have the most traction. So when we want to accelerate, we want all 4 tires to be equally loaded and we want them all to face in the same direction and accelerate. When we're cornering, same thing. We want them all to be equally loaded, to have the maximum amount of traction available, and that's when we have the most grip cornering. Okay, so now that we covered tires, that seems pretty simple. Now we kind of get that. Would that mean if you have the most forward traction, then you have the least amount of traction under braking? That's what the drawing is showing. No, it's like maximum. What I mean is, this is, for example, maximum under acceleration. That's maximum under braking. That's what I was trying to say. And then left, right. So then you could kind of track. You could track what you're doing. So this is as hard as you can accelerate until the tire starts losing traction. If you accelerate too hard, you'll get wheel spin. You understand what I mean? If you are cornering, this is as much side bite as the tire can have. Go too far, it will start sliding. So a great driver, if you could kind of plot this, if you could gather some data from the car, and you could plot this circle and see how the tires are gripping, a great driver would constantly be close to this area. He's accelerating here, then he enters the corner and he's along this arc. He doesn't go over it, and he isn't inside here. He isn't leaving anything on the table. So going around the track, he's constantly within this circle, but close to the edge. That's what great drivers can do. They can go to the very limit of what the tires can provide, but they don't go too far. So they don't spin out or slide or whatever. They don't spin the wheels unnecessarily. They drive within what the tires can provide. So next step. We know we want to have weight on the tires, and we know we want all 4 tires to be equally loaded. Well, what happens when you're driving around the track? You have the car here, and you've all seen a car go in the corner, right? Car goes in the corner, it dives on the front end, right? The rear goes up, front end dives. So now you have unequal weight or load on the tires. More on the front, less on the back. You're turning in the corner, what happens? This front wheel has, when you're turning in, this front wheel has the most load right now, because you slowed down, the front end had more load. You turn, it leans on this front corner. So this front corner has the most load, and this rear corner has the least. Even in some cases, you can see cars going to a corner, they lean and the rear wheel comes off the ground, off the racetrack. So then you're middle of the corner, and the outside tires will have the most load, and the inside tires will have less. Then you accelerate out, what happens normally? The car will squat to the outside, right? So the outside rear tire will have the most load, and then the inside front tire will have the least. Maybe you've seen a car exit the corner and the inside wheel is ballooning because it's off the ground. So there you can see by just looking at pictures or watching a car go around the track that the car is constantly moving. It's rolling, it's diving, it's squatting. So the weight is being transferred while it's negotiating the track. So the loads on the tires are changing. And I just said we want to kind of keep them even. That gives us the most traction. So someone might say, well, why not just limit that? Why not just not let the car roll or dive or squat? Well, the problem is that doesn't actually stop load transfer. If you can imagine a go-kart has no suspension. A go-kart goes around the corner, there's still load being transferred. The outside wheels will still have more load on them than the inside. And that's what the driver in a go-kart, when he goes around the corner, he will be moving his weight to the inside of the corner, right? To try and combat that. He's trying to keep the go-kart level and the load on inside and outside tires the same. Well, we can't do that. We can't move our body position. We aren't in the car, you know? that's a bit of an issue. So we do that with setup. We try to get the maximum grip by working on our setup. And it's not just that. There's another thing also to this. We need to be able to drive the cars. The car can't be too aggressive, too nervous, too unforgiving, where things happen so quickly that we can't react. Maybe the fastest possible car would be one that a human can't drive, because things happen so quickly that we just don't have time to react. So that's also one thing, one aspect you have to think about when it comes to setup. So basically, what we determined is we want all 4 tires equally loaded, and we want the car to behave in a way which is predictable, which gives the driver time to react to whatever is happening. He will lean to the out. Well, actually, that can be true. That can be true in go-karts. Leaning to that. It kind of would depend on the situation, I would think. Anyway, let's move on to how we get grip from these cars. Look into that later. Yeah, okay. This is the best way to explain this. I made a good roll center video. I think it was episode 14. So the 14th video I did was about roll centers. And there I explained that the roll centers determine how the car acts on the track. If it feels like when you're going in the corner that it wants to get sucked into the track, or if it feels like it's on the track and may want to flip over. And it also affects camber change, so how the angles of the wheels change when you're negotiating the track. Now the roll center is something that the designer of the car should design, and then they aren't really things that are changed much by the driver. And the reason is that the roll centers are really complicated to get right. So the front and the rear need to work together. If you watch the episode about roll center, then you'll understand. So that's why when people start setting up the car, the roll center isn't really the first thing you want to mess with, especially if it's a well-designed car, because you're going to upset the balance of the car. A well-designed car will work well on every track with the same upper link and arm settings. Like the same roll center settings will work well on every track. And the reason is that the front and the rear work together. On low bite, medium bite, high bite, they will keep doing the same thing and the car will work in the balanced way. The front end isn't suddenly going to grab, the rear end isn't going to slide out. You won't have any surprises because the designer has done a good job of making the window where the car works very wide. If you then start changing the roll centers to get more steering or to change the feel of the car, you might upset this balance. So there are other things you should do first. Yes, you can tune with the roll centers, but I wouldn't do that first on a good car. I would do some other basic things, and I'm going to go through those now and also explain why I would do that. Also, a good designer would tell you what kind of things to do to the roll centers, because on these cars, when we adjust the roll centers front and back on the shock towers or the hubs, or we raise or lower the arms, it does make a difference, and you can make changes to where the car will feel different, but the balance will still be good front to rear. But it's really hard to do that as a driver if you don't know everything that changes on the car. So really that's why each car should have some sort of setup guide that says, use these holes. If you want a more aggressive car, do this. If you want something else, do that. So that I feel like that's where many people get lost with setup, when they start experimenting themselves. Another good point is cars are different. For example, on the Kyosho on the rear, here, on the rear where you adjust this in a link. On the Kyosho, it kind of works the same direction as on my car. So on a high grip track, let's say, if you were to raise the inner links, then the car would drive more in the track. You could be on the throttle more, it would feel safer to drive, it wouldn't want to flip over, and it would just feel softer and smoother and easier to drive, less aggressive. Then on the HB, it's actually the opposite. Because of the way the car is designed, there you actually don't want to raise it anymore. You actually want to lower it. If you look at the setups the HB guys run, they almost always run the lowest hole. And actually I feel they should have an even lower hole to run. So that's another thing where people get confused. They try and compare different cars, but you can't really do that. So you have to know your own car, and your manufacturer should tell you the things you need to do. Okay, so let's try and explain this concept. I'm gonna do it by explaining the Black Edition basic setup. So we created a setup that was very easy to drive, and it was very consistent track to track. And what this meant was you could always put the car on the track and it would feel similar. It was the best on, I would say, like a medium traction track. An average grip track, the car would perform the best. So if we go back to how I started this, I said we want the car to be predictable, we want it to give you time to react to what's happening, and we want to try and keep all 4 tires equally loaded. The way we do that is we have the car move. So in the corner, the car will roll. Now it will roll a certain amount. When you go into the corner, it will dive a certain amount. In the corner, it will lean to a certain amount. When you accelerate, it will squat a certain amount. So all the movements are within a certain range. And that range is designed to create the most traction. So the tires, the camber angles of the tires, the load on all 4 tires, it's as good as it can be. That's the goal. Like, we're trying to achieve perfection. And this basic setup is made so that the range within which the car moves during a normal lap of the track will be a good one. The camber change won't go too far. You won't suddenly lose traction. The roll centers, the way they move, the way they make the car feel, it's all within a workable range. Now what happens when you go from this track to a different track is the movements will change. So if you go to a very, very slippery, loose track, the car won't roll as more anymore. It won't roll as much anymore. It won't dive as much anymore when you go into the corner. It won't squat as much. The camber change will be different because of this. You won't reach that point where the tires have the most traction anymore. So your car will slide now. It's not gripping as much anymore. And in these situations, what you have to understand is what you really want to achieve is you want that same feeling as you had on that average traction track. So the only things you really should change is softer springs, for example, just to get some movement in the car. If you want the car to roll more, you can also change the sway bars, so softer sway bars. So maybe, let's say on the Black Edition, we are using 2.3 sway bar front, 2.6 rear. And maybe on a medium high grip track, we use the HB spring, so the HB yellow spring. We go to a loose track, we don't change diff oils or roll centers or this or that, like we don't change that stuff. We just go to the JQ gray spring. Instantly the car feels more predictable and smooth around the track. Well, we're still lacking a bit of steering. We're still lacking a bit of grip. We go down 2.2 front, 2.5 rear sway bar. So one step down on the sway bar. And now the car is moving around the track to the same amount as it was on that medium traction track. So it's rolling more, it's diving, squatting more, and the driver has, again, that same good feeling. So going around the track, he can see, you know, it's almost like you feel it when you're driving the car. You can feel the car roll in the corner and you know where the maximum amount of traction is. So the feedback is there again. Then the opposite. Opposite is you go to a high grip track. High grip track, what happens is the car will move outside of the range where it works right. So the car will start rolling too much. It will dive too much. It will squat too much. So all the movements will be too big. And what can happen is, for example, on the rear of the car, let's look at just the rear of the car. In a corner, if it rolls too much, this outside tire, the camber, will go far positive. You'll start losing grip. Maybe it wants to flip over. Same also, if the front dives a lot, the angles of the tires will be wrong. You won't have any clearance anymore. Maybe there are bumps in the corner, you start hitting the bumps. When you exit, the front wheel will lift off the ground, the rear is squatting so much. And also, when you just want to exit the corner and go straight, it will take longer for the car to square up and go because it's, you know, so far out of shape. So again, we don't start by changing roll centers or diff oils or axle heights or these kind of stuff. No, we just do the basics again. So we go to a harder spring. So if we're running the JQ grays, we go to an HB yellow. Maybe we try HB yellow front, blue rear. Maybe we run HB yellow front and rear. Those springs are harder than the JQ ones and the car won't move as much anymore. Then we go up on the sway bar. We had the 2.2, 2.5. We go to the 2.3 and the 2.6. Maybe the track is high speed and high bite and we still feel like the rear end is moving too much. It's not, you can't get on the gas hard and feel safe. The car will do something weird. So maybe we go to the 2.8 in the rear for the sway bar. So we've only been changing springs and sway bars. Keep the same setup, just change springs and sway bars. And that's enough. And the reason is that what we are really doing with the setup is we are just making the car move within the same range that it's designed to move. So the car manufacturer comes up with a basic setup, says this works on an average track. It works because the car will roll, dive, squat, do everything on a lap in the right way. There's no right way, but it does it in a way which creates traction, which doesn't surprise the driver by suddenly spinning out or pushing or then oversteer, then push again. It's very consistent and easy and linear. And what we do when we go to a different track with different traction level is we just adjust the springs and the sway bars so that the movements of the car are the same as they are on that average traction track where it's good. That's really the goal of setting up a car that's well designed. And anything other than that is just cosmetics. It's to fit a specific section of the track or a specific driving style or something like that. And yeah, I hope you understood what I was trying to say. I wasn't really reading here. Yeah, sorry. Karts don't have diffs. That's true. Yeah, makes sense. So you lean out in a kart to lift the inner rear wheel. Since there is no differential in a kart, the rear wheel has the same speed while turning. That means the inner wheel brakes since the radius is smaller. So instead, you lean outwards to lift the inner wheel. I hope you understand how I'm trying to... Yeah, okay, that makes perfect sense. Yes, never have to change diff oils. I think I've done a Facebook Live on diffs too. My point really is that the diff oils aren't going to fix a car that's not working right. Like you can change diff oils, and if they are way off, then they're gonna make a car bad. That's true. But if you're running basic diff oils and your car isn't feeling right, then it's not gonna, changing diff oils isn't gonna solve the problem. Okay. What was I supposed to say? Maybe I should, yeah, I'm gonna explain the Black Edition basic setup first, and then walk through the new setup. That's what you want to know anyway. So the basic setup for the Black Edition was designed to be very easy to drive. So everything was done to where the initial steering would be smooth, very smooth and easy. So here we have these carbon plates on the knuckles. We use the long one. Number 1 is long. What that does is it makes the initial steering smooth, but then when you're in the corner you have steering. Also the knuckle. So the steering knuckle here, we have some inclination. So if camber is 0, then if you have 0 inclination, the kingpin angle will be also 0. But if you have some inclination, that will be angled in. So you have 0 camber, the kingpin, so the screws here for the knuckle, they'll be angled like this. So when you do that, it also makes the car where initially it's very smooth, but then when the car slows down, you're in the corner, you turn the wheel more, it will have more steering. So that's what we did. We made it like really numb around center, and then when you slow down, you're in the corner, you still have steering to get around the corner. That was one thing we did. And the pistons we ended up running, we don't actually run the stock pistons very often. They're good too, but we found that sometimes you would go to a track and they didn't feel right. So we came up with different pistons. 7 1.25 in the front, 7 1.35 in the rear. And the shock positions are pretty stood up also. And with these pistons, it was just super consistent. No matter what the track was like, the suspension would be good and it would work. And also you didn't have to change the shock oil much, which was good. So it wasn't very sensitive to that shock oil. You could use oil that was a bit too thin or a bit too thick or just right, and the car would still handle. So the shock package was very good and easy for people. And we used the gray springs, but we did recommend using some harder springs on higher grip. Sway bars, 2.3, 2.5. We tended to put a 2.6 on the rear just to make it more stable, but the stable when on power and driving aggressively. But the 2.5 had a bit more grip, so we left that as the stock sway bar. Diff oils, pretty thick diff oils actually work in this car, but we didn't go too crazy. We had a thicker diff oil in the front, I can't remember, 10 or 12,000. And then, I don't know, 6,000 in the center, I think, 3 or 4 in the rear, just because it's easier to drive that way. So it's faster to have something like 12, 12, 5, but just because we wanted the stock setup to be easier, we went thinner in the center diff. What else? The other things on the setup is pretty much, how can I say, like the average settings. So the arm holders, we had 0 inserts everywhere, I think. And that's how the car was designed. We kind of wanted it to be super neutral and easy, just running everything in the middle, because then you can adjust either way. So the car itself, even for me, it feels good, and I can drive it aggressively or smoothly, or just drive it around and think about other things, or really focus and really push the car, and it kind of handled everything I threw at it. And different skill level drivers, they would drive the car, and you could see that immediately they get it. Like, it's not doing anything crazy. The steering is easy, and they have a good feeling for it. They aren't spinning out doing donuts or running into curves. Like, you could see that the car is doing all the right things. But, and here's the but, I tended to be a bit slow. And slow because I'm not a great driver. See, the car was designed to be easy, not fast. And for most drivers out there, that's actually good. They will be faster with an easy car because they don't have enough skills to drive a car that's fast or harder to drive. So they need a really neutral, easy car to be fast. And also they need it to be consistent. So what I wanted to do now was I wanted to take the car and change up the setup to where it's faster. So it has more aggressive steering, more steering overall also, and then it just does everything a bit more aggressively snappy and just with more grip. And but the challenge there is I still want it to be easy to drive for me. Like, I still want it to be easy, but I want it to be faster at the same time. So I'll explain all the changes I made and why I made them to the setup. And now you could actually check. I posted it online. So if you go on our website, the stories.THEQuagraine, and then you scroll down to setups and guides. Then you go to the black edition setup sheets. If you don't change roll centers and diff oils according to grip levels of the track, when and why do you change roll centers and diff oils? Well, roll centers, honestly, you don't really need to change much. You can, like, if you're stuck, you've done all the basic stuff. So you've done springs, sway bars, toe in, camber, down travel, ride height. You've done all of that. And you still, for example, feel like you just want the front end to be a bit more aggressive. Then yeah, you can lower the link on the front shock tower, for example. Or on our car, for example, on the rear, on a really high grip track, if we raise the whole rear link, it will be a bit smoother and less edgy. Or if vice versa, if we're on a slippery track, if we lower the whole link, we'll have more grip. So there are those sorts of things you do, but people just go crazy, like really changing them a lot, front and back and length, long and short and all that stuff. And you don't need to do that. Like, when it's designed right, we never change the length now of the camber links. And I hardly ever change the height of them either. Because it's like, when you get the roll centers right, that's it. You are changing other things to always get the car to work within that range that I tried to explain to you earlier. So that's why you don't really mess with the roll centers after that. So anyway, someone put the link there, that's good. So team driver setups in black edition setups, the latest one, developmental May 18. So you can follow it over there. So the first thing is the steering. So we needed more aggressive steering. So what I did was the following. So here we have piece number 3. It's shorter, so it gives more aggressive steering. That's something we needed. Then Also, I lowered the front gearbox. So you know we have the carbon shims here. I removed it. I removed the gearbox shim on the front. I also lowered the arm all the way. So I have the number 1 inserts here in the front and then on the rear of the front gearbox. And this, it just, well, actually this thing also affected steering. So I leaned the front shock in all the way. And this just made the car turn a lot more. But it started having a tendency where it turned so much into the corner that then mid-corner when I want to get on the gas, it like oversteered. So I solved that by changing the knuckle. So I no longer run the knuckle with inclination. I run the old White Edition LV knuckle that's straight. And what that did is it made the steering more linear. So you have a lot of steering going in and then you still have the same steering in the corner. You don't get more in the corner like those other knuckles do. So this way the car was more aggressive and had more steering into the corner. So I could go faster into the corner, just turn and it would turn in, but then it wouldn't oversteer mid to exit. And removing the gearbox shim, what that did, it made it drive around the track in a way that it felt like the front end was sucked into the track. Like I could drive it more precisely. I could really keep a tight line around the corner, go over a roll, and the front end would just feel like it was glued to the track instead of kind of popping up and wandering. It would just stay on the track. So it really felt like the front end had more grip when it was going around the track. So, number 3, carbon plate here for more steering. No carbon plate. The White Edition LV knuckle, no inclination. And then these are actually also the White Edition LV arm holders. See, when you remove the gearbox shim, you have to run different arm holders, the old ones. And then I lowered the arm all the way in these arm holders. Okay, so that's the front end. That's the changes I made there. Then I had to match the rear end so the car would still be balanced. So what did I do? On the rear, I am still running the carbon shim. I feel it's better with the carbon shim in the rear, definitely. You can drive it more aggressively and it's more predictable. But what I did was I again lowered the arm on the inside. So the number 1 insert hole all the way down on the C and the D block. So here, for anti-squat, the number 1 insert hole all the way down. Same thing here on the towing block. So the arm is as low as possible. And here, I'm running the 3.25 towing block. So a bit more towing. So I lowered the arms front and rear, gave the front end more aggressive steering, and then put a bit more towing on the car. So I gave the whole car a bit more traction and more aggressive steering. On the rear, I also leaned the shocks over, all the way on the tower. So I leaned the front and rear shocks over, and the reason I did that was, when you do that, the car feels more plush going around the track. It tends to handle bumps better, but it tends to also be a bit sluggish, I feel, like not as precise, not as aggressive. But I thought, I want to do that. I want to lean the shocks over and just find a setup that works with the shocks leaned over. And also another benefit, when the shocks are laid over, you can hit jumps faster because it doesn't pop as much. So you don't jump as much. So you can hit the jumps at a higher speed and jump the same. So that was actually the first thing I did. I leaned the shocks over and then started to find a setup for that. And I found some good pistons that seem to work really good. 6-hole 1.4s. And I actually have 6-hole 1.4s front and rear now. And that's been really good. So you should try that on different tracks and give feedback, see how it works. But they seem to jump and land well. They are very smooth over bumps. and that's pretty much what you need. And in the corners, they feel like they have a lot of grip and allow the car to roll a lot, so it doesn't feel stiff going around the track. And what else was I supposed to say? Yes, so here, the front. This is the last thing I did, which is good. You should do this, but it requires some different parts. So, here I'm using the outside hole on the arm, but our shock isn't long enough to do this. So I'm actually using the HB Racing long, low shock end. And the length is now 106. So before we were running like 102, now it's 106. So you need a shock end that's 4 mil longer. The HB one, they have 4 mil shock shafts, I think, so it's a bit loose, so I glue them on. I put some super glue in the shock end and then screw it on, and it's been good. And the shock length, like I said, 106. So all the way laid down on the tower and all the way out on the arm. And what this did is, it again made the car more aggressive. So it feels like you have more steering because the car just, the front end really turns into the corner when you want it to. Yeah. So a combination of giving the car more traction and making it kind of slow and sluggish, but then bringing it back by changing the front end to be more aggressive. That's really how I would describe it. What other changes are there? Let's see. So, shocks all the way leaned over on the tower. Outside on the front arm with the HB long shock end. Arms on the inside are lowered all the way. I don't know if I told you what that does. So, when you lower the arm on the inside all the way, it makes the car softer. It makes the car drive softer, so it kind of feels like it rolls more and it has a softer feel to it. And it gives the car a feeling of more traction. So I wanted that, obviously. And what else did I change? I put some more towing on the car. I'm using the White Edition LV A and B blocks and steering knuckles. And I don't have a carbon gearbox shim on the front. Other stuff is pretty standard. I'm still using the +1s in the rear hubs. Still using 18-degree caster. The rear hub is 1 shim in front, 3 behind. Rear link is standard. I'm using the +1 hexes. Diffs, I was experimenting with thinner front diffs. So 10,000 again, just to get more steering. So 10 in the front, 12 in the center, and 6 in the rear. And then I've tried some different springs. The Mugen springs feel really good actually, but I was slower with them than with my own, the gray springs. The old rear shock shaft can also fit. Yeah, that's a good idea, Dieter. So the old yellow edition shock shaft, right? It was shorter than the white edition. So maybe we could try putting that in the front here. But then the problem will be that under compression it will go too far. So you would have to put some fuel tubing on the shock shaft there to limit that. Yeah, I was saying the Mugen springs. So Mugen 9.25 front and 9.75 rear. I had the, sorry, 10.75. I had the 10.5 first, but it was too soft and I put the 10.75. And they were good, the car feels very good, but it's just slower. So then when you put the JQ gray springs back on, it was faster. So the feeling was a bit different, but the feeling was a bit more aggressive, but faster, you know, so you just have to go with that. Okay, you mean flipping these. So you see how the steering links are flipped. So the link is curved and it's moving the turnbuckle back, and same on the inside, the link is curved, and I'm basically moving the turnbuckle backwards. And the reason I do that is I give more clearance here for the sway bar. That's the only reason. Like, you can run whatever shape links here, it's not going to change the feeling of the car. It doesn't make a difference. It just moves the turnbuckle further away from the sway bar. Joseph, just post the setup sheet. Yeah, it's posted on our website. I'm just explaining the changes so you understand what I did there. Yeah. You should start selling these pistons. Makes it easy to buy. What pistons do we have now? We have like 7-hole. I don't know if we have 6-hole ones. I don't think so. Gea made a whole bunch of pistons for us at one stage. Let's see if we can find some pistons here. Seven-hole, 5-hole, blanks. Well, we have blanks. So you could get the flat blank pistons. Let's see. Ha, temporarily out of stock. We have tapered ones. We had tapered blank ones in Europe. Let's see in America. Let's see what we have in America. But anyway, flat piston, 6-hole. Works good. And in America we have eight-hole, 5-hole, 7-hole, blank. In America we have both in stock. So in the US JQ store you can buy some Gea blank pistons and you can drill 6 times 1.4. Tapered pistons can work also, but flat ones just seem to be more consistent. Everywhere they're good. Sometimes the tapered ones aren't good. Tapered ones, I feel, make the car more nervous. So if you run it flat up, taper down, the rebound will be faster, and on the track it just feels more nervous. I don't like it. If you run in the opposite way, the car feels stuck to the track more, and it doesn't pop as much. But then I feel like it's not as good in bumps, and you can't connect the dots in the sections as well, I feel. So flat pistons is the way to go. Will it cause the shock bushings to wear quicker laid over? Well, I haven't noticed the difference, to be honest. What about higher sway bar position on front diff box? Yes, so we have a 3D printed gearbox cover that we sent to the 100 guys back in the day. So we raised this sway bar location so it wouldn't hit the drive shaft. But also what you can do is, where can I show this? Here I can show you this. So you can make these sway bar links. So these sway bar links you can see is made from shock ends. So I just cut 2 shock ends and use a grub screw in between, and then you can make it taller. And then you can make the front ones a bit taller and the sway bar won't hit the drive shaft. So you can do that. So I would recommend you all now go and check that setup sheet and get the required parts. So the long shock end from HB and blank pistons, drill them to 6 times 1.4 and give it a try. Yeah, that's that. I feel like I did such a terrible job there early on trying to explain setup theory. See, you need to prepare for these. I just had no time to do that. Nice cap, thank you. So anyway, I don't know, like, did you even understand anything? I'm gonna conclude this and then e-buggy the hell out of here. So we kind of confirmed that we understood that we need to make a car work in a way where the driver can react to what's going on. And we understood that we want the four wheels to be equally loaded. Maybe I can explain that thing with sway bar. Let's just go back. I feel bad because I did such a terrible job. So let's talk about sway bars. This explains it really well. So if you're going into a corner, you're cornering with a car and the car starts leaning. As the car rolls, the rolling movement actually is delaying the load transfer. So the four wheels will still stay relatively equally loaded because the car is going into the corner and the car is rolling. So the rolling is actually a good thing. And it gives time to the driver to react, to see like, oh, the car is rolling now. Eventually it will roll to a point and then stop rolling. Then a lot of load is going to transfer to the outside tires and either the car is going to flip over or it's going to start sliding. So if a car is rolling a lot, you might want to put a sway bar on. Let's say you put sway bars on front and rear to stop the rolling. Well, if you put sway bars on that are too thick, you stop the car from rolling. What happens is you go into the corner, instead of rolling, the sway bar is going to stop the car from rolling. And the sway bar, actually, the way it works is it's going to transfer load to the outside tires and reduce the load on the inside tires. So it's going to increase the load transfer and destabilize the car in the sense that the four wheels aren't equally loaded anymore. So you will have less traction. Did that make sense? Did you now understand what I was trying to say before? I hope so. That's why, let's say you're in a corner and the rear of the car wants to slide out. Mid-corner, the rear just, boom, slides out. If you go to a softer sway bar in the rear, that will stop happening. The reason is that in the corner, the rear slid because the outside tire is loaded by the sway bar and the inside is lifted up. So the rear tires are very unequally loaded. And I said in the beginning that when they are equally loaded, you have the most grip. So if they are really unequally loaded, you have less grip, the least grip. So that's why it slides out. So if you put a soft rear sway bar, what happens in the corner is instead of the sway bar putting the load on the outside tire and lifting up the inside tire, the rear of the car will roll instead. The tires will stay more equally loaded and the rear will have more grip, and it will grip and not slide out. You won't spin out. There. I hope that cleared it up a bit at least. Next, when you're at the track, make a mini reds tuning video. Real-time example of how your engines run for you. Yeah, maybe I should do that. The internet kind of sucks at the track though, but I could maybe film a video or I could have a friend film a video maybe and then post it afterwards. Hi JQ, why is it difficult to find this car in Spain? Spare parts. By the way, the merchandising looks very good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it's because we don't really have a very active agent, distributor, dealer in Spain. That's the problem. We have Hobby Royale, but it's more like a hobby for them, I guess. So, not very serious there. So yeah, we just need someone in Spain to locally stock and sell the product, and then it will be easy. I'm going to have to bug you about the weight oils. What do you mean? No, I don't run VRC Pro. if you're traction rolling heavier sway bar, yes, I mean, it doesn't always help. For example, this is a case where if you're traction rolling, let's say, then if your roll centers are high, then it doesn't matter what you do to the sway bar, you're still going to traction roll. If your roll centers aren't set right, if the designer of the car hasn't done a good job, and then also hasn't given you the right setup guides, so you know what to do on a high grip track, then if you have high roll centers, the car is just going to traction roll them no matter what. You're basically you're putting thick sway bars on so that the car cannot roll or move or do anything, and you're not going to be fast. It's not going to be good. You're going to grip and then lose traction and slide. Maybe you're going to spin out in corners instead of traction rolling. Like, it's not going to be good. On a high grip track, what you want is, you want low roll centers. So maybe you raise the links on the top. If your car is terrible on high grip, what you can do is you can maybe lengthen the link to slow the response time down, so it's easier to drive. Then you raise the links on the towers so that the car will drive in the track, not on the track. It won't want to flip over. And then you figure out the sway bars also, how the sway bars. But you still want to have down travel. You still want to have the suspension kind of feel normal, like on a normal off-road track. You don't want to go crazy there with super hard springs or hard oils or whatever. Package all these upgrade items and sell as a package. No, we have spare parts and option parts. Get them. We're not making any packages. No one buys packages. When am I going to the UK? Well, I would have gone to Neo, but there was no Neo, so I don't know when I'm going now. Traction roll, lower ride height. Yes, that also helps, depending on the track. If it's a track with big jumps and like rough in sections, then you can't do that really. It's not going to be good. Maybe you can get away with just lowering the front and leaving the rear. Wouldn't removing the front gearbox shim be the same as adjusting your ride height? I remember you saying adjusting the diff height is the same as... No, it's not the same, because we changed the other things. I just said I changed the arm holders too, so I'm not moving the arm position with the gearbox. And also I can compensate. Actually, that's something I did wrong on the setup sheet. I can compensate the upper link too when I move the gearbox down. So the net effect is basically lowering the diff. That's what we're doing. We kept the arms the same, compensated the upper link. Actually, the reason I put I have to edit the setup sheet. The reason I put the upper link to the lowest position on the picture was because I'm running it in the middle, but I lowered the gearbox, so it's actually lower now. Do you see what I mean? Like here, I'm running this in the middle. Now with the shim, I ran it in the middle. So when I lowered it, I raised it to the top hole, but I preferred it in the middle still. So that's why I kind of brain farted and put it in the low hole there on the setup sheet. But so yeah, no, it's not the same thing as changing ride height. I'm raising and lowering the diff. And I'm readjusting the other things. Are you going to stick with this setup for now, or will you be going back to your standard black edition setup? Well, I'm going to try both to see. I'm going to stick with this for now and keep working on it because I think it has potential. But I'm still going to have a car with my old basic setup, and then I'll see what the difference is on different tracks, lap times and feeling. When you said you changed toe, yeah, I changed rear toe in. So you can't do that with the turnbuckles. Okay. That really sucked in the beginning. It kind of improved towards the end. Is there anything unclear still? Should I cover anything else, or are we done? Let me know. We're still over 100 people. That's crazy. That's actually pretty impressive. So it couldn't have been too bad. When you lower the diff to the chassis, are you not lowering the hinge pin mounts as well? No, I just told you. I changed them. Running the old car ones. So, let's have a couple of good questions. RCGP, that's a good question. Probably next week we're gonna do some RCGP talking. No, the old arm plates A and B are high. They are higher than these. So I lowered the gearbox and put the higher A and B blocks on. Okay, that's one question. Now we need something else and then we're done. Different flywheel size. The flywheel size doesn't make a difference. Maybe to how easy it is to start in the starter box, but the weight does. So I haven't actually run a heavy flywheel in a long time, but basically a heavy flywheel just makes the engine smoother, like less punchy. Because there's a weight, so it has to work more to turn, you know, inertia. So it just smooths out the power band, the initial power of the engine. Stop making selling your JQ thread stuff so difficult. Yeah, it's pretty. Did you order stuff? Did you get it? I don't know. Can't remember. So the raising and lowering the diff, the reason for doing that is the friction here. So in the outdrive over here, we have a pin. And as it turns and the suspension moves, it moves in the outdrive a bit. And it creates friction here. And then here we have a joint on the outside. And there's friction here also. And these joints, when there's a torque on them, they kind of always want to straighten out. And depending on where these 2 points of friction are, they will oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Exert forces on the chassis, on the car, differently. So they will want the front end to be in a different position, higher, lower. It's going to affect how the front end acts on the track on power, especially on power. That's the main that's really the only time you notice a difference. So on power, you'll feel, like I explained, you'll feel the car want to stay very low to the track and be very precise in its movements. Or maybe if the diff height is different, then you'll feel the car kind of want to flip over maybe. Or the car will feel very soft and it will roll a lot. Or the car will feel very stiff and flat when you're driving around the track. So those are the sorts of things that the diff height affects. So on power, the height the car wants to be at and how the car wants to roll. So does it want to be soft and roll a lot, or is it stiff and just and wants to stay quite level? How do you choose the best line on the track for a beginner racer? Okay, so I think it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or whatever you are, but you should always kind of try and choose the same line. Maybe a difference for the beginner is try to be more consistent, so try to drive more in the middle of the track than really cutting the corners tight, because when you do that, there's more of a risk of hitting the corner and crashing. But I don't think there's a point in doing that. You should just practice driving the best line. So the biggest mistake people make is they go too fast into the corner and then blow the whole corner. So you need to slow down earlier and then try to hit the apex of the corner and maintain your speed. So slow down earlier and try and maintain your speed through the corner. So try to make your corners round, not very sharp, so not that you stop and then turn and then go. Try to come in a bit wider, make a smooth arc close to the apex, and then accelerate out fast. So slow down earlier, maintain your speed through the corner, and then accelerate out as soon as you can. And start accelerating harder and earlier, and practice that. But the biggest mistake you see is people going too fast into the corner and then slowing down too much in the corner, not staying on the line, spinning out, all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So slow down earlier, that's the best advice I can give. Slow down in good time, maintain your speed through the corner. I have to say, JQ, what you're doing is awesome for the entire racing scene. I appreciate what you're doing, keep up the good work. Thanks heaps. Tell me something about the angle from the dog bones to the front and rear, and how does it affect the drivetrain? Okay, so that's a similar thing to, first of all, thank you, that's good. Positive feedback is always good. Similar thing to the diff height thing that I was saying. So when you look from above, you see that the drive shafts, well, I don't know if you see, but the drive shafts on the rear, they aren't straight. They're actually pointing forward like this. The outside is forward, and this is a similar thing to the diff height issue. So when you move it more forward, when there's more dog bone sweep, it will also make the suspension act stiffer when you're on the throttle. So when you're on the gas, because there's more friction in the outdrive and in the joint, it will cause the suspension to bind more. So it's not, the car is going to be stiffer. The suspension doesn't get to work as smooth because there's more friction thanks to the drive shaft angle. So that can be a good thing, because you can set the car up to be soft. So now we get back to what I was saying earlier, to where you want the car to roll a certain amount. There's this like best amount that the car will roll because of camber change and all these things that I tried to explain to you before. Now, having said that, then when you get on the gas aggressively, when you're driving really fast and you punch it, you don't want the car to then roll too much or squat too much. And what this drive shaft angle does is, when you're just rolling around the track, the car can feel soft and plush, and it will, lean or roll over, and the feeling is very nice. Then you get on the throttle and it will stiffen up. So all the forces that will hit the car from the track, because you're going faster now and the wheels are spinning fast and you're driving aggressive, they would normally cause the car to roll too far, right? Or squat too much. And then you go outside of this range that the car works well in, but the drive shaft angle stiffens up the car, so it stops that from happening. So that's why car design gets so complicated, because we've established that we want it to work within a certain range, but then on and off throttle, the car will do different things. So you really want it to stay in that same range no matter what's going on. So a really great car will be softer off throttle, and so at lower speeds and lower forces acting on the car, it will roll to this, or within this great range that we've established. And then when you're driving faster and more aggressively and you're hitting the corners harder, it won't go too far, because the drive shaft angle is stiffening up the suspension, because you're on power and stiffening up the suspension. So yeah, that's the best explanation I can give you right now today. And CVDs and universals are different, because the way they are built is different. So the friction in the joint is different. And the main thing with CVDs is, with a CVD, you can put the joint, which is here, the joint is here, inside the hub on the universal. On the CVD, you can move it out here. You can move it further out. And the position of that joint also affects the friction. And again, it affects what I was explaining earlier. It affects how much it binds the suspension when you get on power. So, I think it's quite, it's typically a fact that universals tend to work better in bumps, and CVDs create a bit more traction. And the reason is that the CVD style drive shaft creates more friction. So the universal won't bind the suspension as much. So when you're driving through bumps, the suspension can still absorb the bumps. Then the CVD style, it binds the suspension more. So the car tends to generate more traction, but when you hit bumps, the suspension is stiffer and it doesn't work as well anymore. And one thing I haven't really tested, why can't I tell you right now? We're actually developing them. Are these hubs, these rear hubs where you can move the joint further out. So you have a CVD, but it's not like a copy of a universal, same joint locations, everything. The joint is further out here in the hub. Because when I've tried those, it smooths out the car a lot. So the rear end of the car just feels a lot smoother and more consistent around the track. So that's something I still want to try. And yeah, I can't really give you an answer on that because I haven't tested it enough. I know the ride height, I'm still using the same, pretty much like 25, 26 in the front, 27 in the rear, 26, 27 in the rear, I'd say. Ackerman, don't really change Ackerman a lot. I'm using the number 3 plate, I said, because it's sharper, more aggressive steering, and then the front hole in the Ackerman plate. It seems to work very good. Does the new setup also improve acceleration? That's actually a good point. Now I can explain invisible speed a bit. I actually noticed a gain in acceleration, and I notice it because we have 2 jumps on my track. My home track is pretty loose, and there are these 2 jumps where the one jump you can just clear when you go inside in the corner, then accelerate. You pretty much barely clear it. The other one you have to go a bit wide to clear it. Or I have to at least. And I noticed that with this setup, I have more forward bite. And I think I have more forward bite because I think laying down the shocks, the transition from cornering to accelerating straight, the car just generates more grip. And then also I think it has to do with lowering the arms on the inside. So since I'm running the arms all the way low on the front and the rear, and then the laid down shocks, I feel like I have more acceleration. I have more grip when I accelerate. So that's a good thing. Okay. The number 3. Yeah, actually, Henry said he had some, but they aren't in the shop. I'm gonna have to ask him tomorrow. Does rebound help against flipping over the car? What do you mean? Actually, I forgot one thing about the setup. When you said rebound, I remembered. So I posted about this on Instagram now. So here on the rear shock shaft, I use some fuel tubing. So anything from 3 to 5 millimeters. I think I have 3 millimeters right now. So the trick is to put the fuel tubing onto the shock shaft here, and it limits up travel. And what that does is, I can explain, for example, on my home track. So we have this long sweeping left-hand corner, and it's also kind of downhill. So like mid corner, if you're going really fast, the car will lean too much and the rear will kind of dump too far, and then the car gets wobbly and unsettled. So when you put the fuel tubing on, the car can't lean that far onto the rear. It gives the car more support, so it stays more flat and it just goes through that corner better. So that's one benefit of the fuel tubing. Then the other thing is going into a hairpin. So sometimes the rear end felt quite stuck in the hairpin. It's like it rolls over and it has so much grip it doesn't want to turn around the hairpin. So now with this, turn around the hairpin and it will swing around faster. You have more rotation in hairpins. So those are the two benefits. In sweeping longer corners, you can drive more aggressively, and the rear will have more support for the car. So you can drive it more aggressively in those sweepers. And then in hairpins, you have more rotation. So that's why I do it. If you put too much, if you don't have any up travel in the rear, the car can be bad in bumps. It can be hard to drive through rough sections. So it's a compromise. Isn't the rear roll center lower with this setup? Yes. If you lower like I did, I lowered the arms 1 mil. So when I did that, basically I lowered the rear roll center a bit, but that's fine. Sometimes I run a lower roll center anyway on the car, but this, yeah, it's good. I only put this fuel tubing in the rear. Yes, I don't do it on the front. I'm about to buy a black edition. Do I build it kit setup or new setup? Well, I mean, it's easier to build a kit setup. You don't really need any parts to do that. I mean, get the 1.3 pistons and drill them out. Start with that, see how you like it, and then try this new setup. When you are kind of comfortable with the car, you know how it is, then try this new setup and see what you prefer. Isn't that droop? Isn't what droop? I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, droop can, if you mean in that long corner I was saying how it would get unstable like past halfway through the corner. Yes, if you reduce droop, you can have a similar effect. You can achieve the same thing, sort of. Less droop, the car won't roll that far also, because that inside, that reduction in droop, how can I show this? So the car is rolling, the car is rolling this way. This inside arm can't go down so far. So when it's rolling like this, it can't roll that far. Because it's limited by the limit of droop. So do you see how far down this arm is? If it's limited like that, it's gonna roll less, right? You see what I'm trying to show you? So limiting rear droop will actually have a similar, not the same, but similar effect to that fuel tubing. The problem also there is, of course, less droop. Not as good in bumps, not as good in jumps, not as good landing jumps. Well, the fuel tubing isn't as good in bumps, but it lands just the same. So it's similar, but same, but different. Yes. Okay, we're still over 100 people. It's amazing. I'm glad this improved a bit towards the end. What else? I think we're done. I think we're done here. Yeah. If there's no more questions, we're gonna end this. And next week, we're gonna have some pretty big Facebook Lives coming. Okay. Can we go now? By the way, my office is pretty empty. It's gonna be good. Did you get a permanent number? I petitioned them for a number. I want a permanent number even though I'm not a world champion. because I have my own car, but it's not going too well at the moment, so don't have a permanent number yet. Can you put a list of the parts you need for the new setup? Yeah, it's on the setup sheet. Buggy, great, thank you, Jeff. I was feeling really bad here because I really messed up the beginning of this video. I was trying to explain these things, but I just really messed it up. But good, you thought it was a great video. Do you ever use different hole sizes in the same piston? Yes. Let's make this the last question. So, different sized holes in a piston have an interesting result. It can make it to where you can run a very soft piston. So you have a lot of holes and it feels quite soft, but it will pack up. I think the different hole sizes make the oil go turbulent sooner or more aggressively somehow, to where the suspension will be very soft, but then you land a jump and it packs up, so it still lands well. So different hole sizes can be a good idea. So that's it. Your way of explaining is in a way that we can understand. That's good, but in the beginning of this Facebook Live, I felt like my way of explaining, even I didn't understand. So maybe we have to redo that. But I've actually talked about it before. I feel like I did a better job before. So yeah, 2 1.3 and 1 1.5, yeah, something like that, for example. That would probably have more pack than 3 1.4s, you know, or something that would have the same whole area. I'm not that good at math, so I can't calculate what that would be. Okay. So anyway, THEQuagraine, I think we're done. See you next time.